I have a problem. My work-life balance is totally out of whack, and I constantly find that I don't have enough time to do the things that I love to do. Also, I need a workbench. There are certain things that I want to do in order to improve the quality of the YouTube channel, mostly having to do with the sound and lighting. However, a lot of that means I'd have to build the solutions that I need in order to cut cost. And I realized if I want to build stuff, I need a proper work surface, which I do not have. So, I need a workbench. The issue is, I don't have enough money to buy one, and I'm not really skilled enough as a woodworker to make one either. That's why I stole one from the garbage, where I belong. Now you might be wondering, why are you making a whole video if you've already solved your problem? Well, this one isn't really ready to be a workbench yet. For one, it's a little bit too short. There's no place to store tools. I don't know if it's level or not. Plus, it's really wobbly. Like, wobblier than I am on the dance floor. And that's what this video is gonna be about. Me turning this literal piece of garbage into something useful. Come along, join me, like and subscribe. You know you want to. Why don't you? Why don't you? Leave a comment if you want me to put improvements, right? That's what I need to be successful. You know, I need you to comment on my videos, bruh.
That's right, it's time to start working on the workbench. And the first step in any garbage-based furniture project is to take apart the garbage that you're stealing in order to see how it works. When you're working with garbage, you often don't have access to the instruction manual, which was the case here. That is why taking the time to take apart this, what I'm assuming is an IKEA desk, was really beneficial because it showed me how everything went together and it helped me decide on how I was going to build the eventual workbench. The hardest thing to take off was the tabletop because it had these little metal dowels in them that would clamp into the frame using these circular screw clamp things. And I really struggled with trying to find a way to remove them. I eventually came to the idea of using the chuck in my power drill to cinch down on them and then twisting them out that way.
It works!
Now that I had everything apart, I, of course, needed to come up with a way to put it all back together. Because that's how working with garbage works. I knew I wanted to keep it simple to make the project easier. However, looking at the tabletop that it came with, I noticed that it was really warped, which meant I couldn't use it because a workbench needs to be really flat. So I decided I was going to make a new one by laminating 2x4s together, and that it would be roughly the same size as the tabletop that it came with. The other major change would be adding cross bracing to the bottom frame to add stability and attaching some sort of shelf to that cross bracing. With a plan in place, I could move on to construction. You know, the building part of building things. I knew in order to add the cross bracing, I would need to add channels to the outside of the legs. Is it called a channel? I think it's called a dado. I don't know. I don't have a table saw nor a dado stack, so I just cut these dados with my circular saw. With all the cuts made, I was able to use a chisel to peel away all the biscuits I just made and clean up the channel that I would later be attaching the cross bracing to. So the main reason why I grabbed this out of the garbage is because I knew it was roughly the size that I wanted this workbench to be. And so I've temporarily reattached this so that I can get a measurement for how long I need to cut my plywood to fill these in. The reason why I'm putting these in is to help with resisting racking. I'm also potentially using them to help support the shelf on the bottom, but depending upon how accurate and straight it is, I might not be able to do that, but I can always just glue the bottom shelf onto the cross braces here. So, well, I couldn't find the tape measure. It's somewhere in my apartment. But one of the plywood slabs I was going to use just for these cross braces is pretty much roughly the size that I need it to be. I don't really need the tape measure. I can just reference this guy, and I'm going to cut across this plywood and I put them in there, make sure they fit, and then I'm going to glue it up, glue this in place as well. We shall see. Alright, so I got the straight edge set up, and let me tell you, getting this set up is like the biggest, so difficult, and one of the biggest reasons why I'm making this workbench is because I don't have a work surface to raise everything above all of my mess in here because I have limited space. So I need to build this workbench if I want to continue practicing woodworking, which I would like to do. So I should be able to just cut across this using this as a reference, and it should give me the correctly sized cross brace, hopefully. At this point, I decided to go a little out of order. Instead of attaching the cross braces first and then attaching the shelves, I clamped the cross braces to the base and attached the shelving to the cross braces. I did this because I was rightfully not confident in my abilities to keep the cross braces square, so I cheated by using the shelving to do that for me. It for you guys.
Okay.
No!
God, that shelving looks just awful. Now I was ready to attach the work surface to my frame. However, I ran into a little snag at the hardware store. There's been a slight change of plan. I was originally just going to buy 14 pieces, 2x4s that were cut into 4-foot lengths. And I was going to laminate those together to make the workbench top. However, they were out of the 4-foot cuts. Despite the website saying they had over 100, they were out of the 4-foot cuts, which was really frustrating. They were also out of 16-foot cuts, which was my backup plan. So instead, I got 3 sheets of 3/4 inch MDF I'm gonna laminate together to make a solid top. It's gonna end up being a thinner top, but it should still be relatively heavy, which is nice. The only thing is that because it's MDF, it means I have to come back later and harden it, because you can harden MDF. That's right. I couldn't get the lumber I wanted for the work surface. That means that little animation I made demonstrating what I was going to do was a total fucking waste of time. Isn't that great? Although, I must admit, gluing the MDF sheets together turned out to be way easier. Unfortunately, coming up with a way to attach the sheets to the frame turned out to be really difficult for me. And as I failed to come up with a plan, the workbench project wormed its way to the back of my mind. And as life continued to get in the way, the project would remain stagnant for many moons to come.
It has been 4 months. Can you tell? Still haven't finished the workbench yet, but that's about to change. All I need to do now is trim the cross braces on the bottom here, but near the legs. Then I need to add the casters, and the reason why I'm adding the casters next is because the main thing that has been keeping me from finishing this project has been the mess that it's going to make when I attach the tabletop to the base frame. So I'm going to be doing that outside at my parents' house.
So the first step in finishing up the construction of this workbench was trimming down the cross braces to size. That way, I wouldn't keep bumping my ankles working my way around the bench. I used my Japanese-style pull saw as a flush trim saw to achieve this. I could dedicate an entire video explaining why you should buy a Japanese-style pull saw. Do it now. I decided that I was going to attach the work surface to the frame with dowels. I used the previous tabletop as a reference for where to drill the holes. I also wanted to work my way up through the bits just to be safe and ensure structural integrity. Look at me, being responsible. The next step to tackle was attaching the casters to the workbench. This proved to be a bit of a challenge because the screws that I had kept deciding to decapitate themselves every time I tried to sink them into the wood.
Oh my...
God damn it! That snap off too? Ah, come on!
It was incredibly frustrating, and I knew I needed to stop and regroup. Now, because the screws broke off inside the workbench, I was no longer able to attach the casters directly to it. So, instead, I made a little cart out of some scrap wood that I had lying around. I also made sure to upgrade my screws to much better ones, from GRK to be specific. Taking the time to build this cart really demonstrated why I wanted to build a workbench in the first place, because it made it so much easier. For those of you looking to get into making of any kind, I highly recommend a workbench being your first project. It just makes everything so much easier. I will include links in the description for some great tutorials for your first workbench. And while you're down there, why don't you go ahead and listen to this call to action and like the video and subscribe. I will be posting all sorts of videos to this channel, including more building videos, but also skits, animations, art, reviews, and commentary videos. My ADHD brain can't focus on anything, so I decided to represent that in my YouTube channel. So if you like variety, stick around and leave a comment. With the cart finished, I put the workbench on it and wheeled it out to my car to do the last steps of this build at my parents' house, because they have outdoor power and I don't. However, while I was taking the bench outside, tragedy struck. You see, my apartment building hates wheelchairs, and in order to exit, I have to walk up a small flight of stairs and then immediately walk down another flight of stairs. Whilst walking down said flight of stairs, I dropped my workbench, and the dowels holding the top to the frame snapped, once again rendering a big chunk of work absolutely pointless. However, me being unwilling to give up, I just ignored the problem so I could focus on the next steps in my plan. The first of which was trimming the work surface to make it a couple inches smaller on every side. My office/workspace is very small, and the area I dedicated to be my work area is absolutely tiny. I needed to make this workbench as small as possible. Look at all that fucking dust. Jesus Christ. MDF is so dusty. My God, I'm so glad I did this outside. Once my workbench was properly sized, I was able to round over the edges with a router. Now, this was the first time I ever used a router, and I made a couple of errors on one of the edges.
Oopsie poopsie.
However, I wasn't too worried about it because this was a workbench, and also my first major building project. Besides, the other 3 sides turned out perfectly, so I wasn't going to cry about it. The last step to do at my parents' house was to apply wipe-on polyurethane finish to the work surface. The reason to do this is that the MDF absorbs a significant amount of the finish and the polyurethane hardens the material because of that. However, I did make 2 major mistakes. The first mistake was buying a pre-made wipe-on poly. It wasn't quite as thin as it should have been, and it's less expensive to make it yourself. The second mistake was sanding between multiple coats of the finish. While this is a good practice with hardwood, the MDF ended up taking on a texture that was undesirable. I only noticed this when the bottom side of the worktop ended up much smoother because I only did 1 application of the finish on that side and didn't sand. These are lessons I will take to my next MDF-based project. After the finish was done curing, I took the workbench home and came up with a way to reattach the worktop. I bought some small right-angled brackets and attached those to the frame. I then applied glue to what remained of the dowels, as well as the surface of the frame. Then I screwed the worktop to the frame using the right-angled brackets. I also made sure to use the nice screws from GRK to attach everything. And once the work surface was attached, the workbench was done.
That's right. Going for a bit of dramatic lighting for this outro. I'm really proud of how the workbench turned out, and I had initially planned to add more to the workbench and make it a series of videos. However, we're moving this year, and actually pretty soon. So my focus in terms of projects is going to be getting a bunch of projects that I need to get done to get rid of stuff as quickly as possible and take care of that. And then we're going to move, and when we move there'll hopefully be space for a proper workshop that's separate from my office. So it will be that. I am planning to get back to content that I would make more often previously. You know, shorts, animations, video game related content soon. But in the meantime, I have a lot of project videos and art videos coming up in the near future. Like I said earlier in the video, this channel is now a variety channel. There's just a bunch of stuff being thrown here. A lot of YouTubers save this kind of stuff for a second channel,
but I really haven't found a focus yet. You can expect more content like this, more random content. Yeah, a big major project coming up is all art related, so look forward to seeing some more art videos from me in the future as well. In the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and sign off. You guys enjoy the rest of your day. McFlipper Pants is over and out of this hizzy.